So one question that will come up all the time, especially from new Crested Gecko owners, is that they don't think that their Crested Gecko is eating, so how can they get it to eat? Now, the first step we need to address is where are you putting their food? Ideally, you want the food higher up in the tank, so about 2/3, maybe halfway of the tank's height, I put their ledge here. Now, this one I got from Gecko Diet, it's magnetic, it comes with 2 dishes. But you can get many other different types. I know Magnaturals do one. The one I wouldn't recommend is the Exoterra Canopy. I was really disappointed with it. It became unsticky and I've heard from a lot of other people they've experienced that too. And I just don't think that's safe for having it in a tank where it can drop from a height and actually drop on the gecko. So I definitely recommend a magnetic one if you can get that. Now, this particular gecko in this tank, I did originally feed her nearer the floor because I didn't have a ledge, but it was on a built up area of wood and she eventually found the food and she did eventually eat it, but ideally get it higher up because that's where they like to eat the best. The next thing to consider is whether or not your gecko can actually get to the ledge. So other than it walking along the glass, because in some cases it can't stick. If it's about to shed, sometimes their feet can get a little bit unsticky, and if the humidity isn't right, their feet can't stick as well. So you need some other way that they can get there if they can't stick to the wall. So in this case, of course, you can have she can walk along the background, but instead of the wall, she also has this hanging plant along the wall, so she can actually climb onto that because that's plastic. So that's one way to get it. She can climb up this plant and get there. She can even climb onto this plant down here and get up there. And of course, yeah, she can go along the wall, around the front of the tank and everything like that. The other thing to consider is obviously Crested Geckos can jump, and along this side of the wall there isn't really anything Isla can walk along because this is a natural tank, so I can't really provide that for her. But she has this massive plant that she's always on, and I've seen her multiple times jump from here to here, and it may look big, but it's really quite close. So even then she has a way of getting there, and this plant she can climb from the background along this plant and she's at the ledge, and even jumping up from up there down to here. So she has multiple ways of getting there if she can't use the wall. So now you've established where and how your gecko is going to get their food, you want to get an appropriate food bowl. Now there are some on the market which are maybe too big for the Crested Gecko. For example, one of the pots that come with the ledge is this pot, and although I have used it for my Crested Geckos and they can eat out of it because it's massive, you do end up throwing away a lot of uneaten food just because there's so much in there. So what I usually do is put one of these inside there. Now I like to use milk lid tops or bottle tops because that way it's wide enough that the gecko can get their face in it and you don't have to use too much food. It's like the ideal amount of food that they usually eat. So now the food's made up, I want to point out one thing. Crested Geckos, they all have their favourite foods and there's no one standard food that they all eat. As you can see, Isla eats Rapashi, my other Crested Gecko eats Pangea. So the best thing you can do is ask the person who you're getting a Crested Gecko from what food they're on currently and just get that and go with that. The person I got my other Crested Gecko from said she was on Rapashi. I did use Rapashi for a bit and she was eating a bit. I gave her Pangea and she went crazy for it. Now Isla does eat Rapashi, but I have to say she does leave a lot more than my other Crested Gecko does with her Pangea, so in the future I may be changing them around a bit, so Isla might try Pangea again. Now one thing you can do is try to flatten this out as much as possible, which is a lot harder than it sounds, but this way if your gecko actually licks the food you'll be able to notice it. Now the other thing you can do if you want to introduce your gecko to the food if you don't think they're eating is get something to put the food on. I always use bamboo skewers because for some reason we bought loads once and they're just left in the kitchen, so I use them. But what I would do is scoop a bit of food here and just put it near her. There you go. Now she loves this food, so she's going to go totally on it. Don't be too worried if your gecko doesn't completely go mad the first time. The best thing to do is just place it in the middle of their nose, so not in their nostrils, just right in the middle, and usually they'll lick it off, but I have known Isla to just leave it and not bother licking it off. Now she's going crazy for that. This one, by the way, is a watermelon and mango. I have to say I have heard a lot of Crested Geckos like it, so that's a good start when it's going to Pangea if you want to know a flavour that seems to be popular. But one thing you'll see, right, is that they're licking the food. They don't bite into it. Sometimes she will. I have seen her bite into it, but generally Crested Geckos will just lick the food. So especially if you have a baby, just imagine a tiny little baby tongue licking that. It's not going to make much of an impression, and I think that's what worries people because they can't see their Crested Geckos actually eaten, when in fact it could have been there for ages just licking this food. Also, if the food's too dry, they might find it harder to lick it up. And also, if there's not enough water in the tank for them to drink, like if you haven't sprayed the tank very well, they might be a bit dehydrated and they might not want so much food, so that's something to consider. But I don't have much of a problem with her eating. She loves it. And if you're absolutely convinced that your Crested Gecko isn't eating, then I suggest weighing your gecko each week, because if it really isn't eating, its weight will decrease. But if it is, you might notice that the weight stays the same or actually increases. Especially weigh them if they're a baby, because it's really cool to see how much they grow. But I hear this so often, people worried that their new Crested Gecko isn't eating, when in fact there are many reasons a gecko won't eat, which I will make a video on in the future for the Crested Gecko, but also because the baby's settling in, it's trying to find its food, it isn't that hungry, or it is eating, you just haven't seen it, and you have to be very observant. So anyway, I'll leave my Crested Gecko to eat this. I hope this video has helped, and thank you very much for watching.